Okay, but, isn't it too much? Of course, she would be at Ophelia's side until she gave birth safely, so she hopes she can be comfortable. Candice, who thought she could stay for several months with just a bed, or even just a couch, next to Ophelia, turned her head uncomfortably. In the past, when he went to Ophelia's house to play, he slept in the same bed. When he was a student, they even shared a dormitory. Now that they are both over 30, and Ophelia had been married for over 10, it probably wasn't like before. He felt bad because he seemed to be being too formal with her. No. Right now, you are Candice Epasher, the head of the Timora National Academy and the president of the Council of Wizards of the Timora Republic. I should at least give you this. Timora was a republic without a king or nobility, and a unique place where the Council of Mages handled the country's affairs, large and small. A place where the strongest wizards gained greater power. Even there, the strongest Candice was young and presided over the Wizard Council. Candice pouted sadly. It felt very strange to hear those words from Ophelia, of all people. Ophelia burst into laughter at the sight of her old friends. Pout. Just kidding, just kidding. In fact, I have a favor to ask of you. Think of it as a bribe. Please. Apart from using magic to take care of your health so that the child can be born safely? That was the original intention when it reached the distant Palace Empire. But now, suddenly, Ophelia had a favor to ask him. Ophelia kept her mouth closed and looked around. Since he had even left a strong warning not to let anyone in, Candice's face seemed even more puzzled. Candice. As the room fell into a dead silence, Ophelia spoke in a deep voice. Candice swallowed hard, feeling unnecessarily nervous, not knowing what her friend, who was clenching her fists in desperation, would say. Isla, she's alive. That? Candice's eyes widened in surprise, knowing that Ophelia's first daughter, lost 10 years ago, was alive. Most believed she was dead because no witnesses came forward, no matter how hard they searched, but Ophelia and Roderick did not give up and continued the search. There was a girl like that alive. Did they find her? Where is? I don't know where it is. He only told us that he would definitely return. Ophelia's eyes filled with tears. Candice bit her lips, not knowing what to say at the sad but happy face of her dear friend. How can I help you? Candice asked with an unusually serious expression. Because Candice should have asked for help with something related to Isla. That girl has a magic tool. A magic box. The box that Ophelia gave to Winfred. Although maximum security magic had been implemented, if they managed to track down the magic tool, they would be able to find Isla. I want you to locate her. Ah. Ophelia had been waiting for Candice's arrival for several days, thinking she could handle the difficult task. Who made this magic tool? Impossible. It's true. At Ophelia's response, Candice's jaw dropped. His expression bordered on despair. A magical tool created by the world's greatest magician. No one could track her. Ophelia bowed her head, as it was a cheeky request for an old friend with whom she had only exchanged letters for years. The words he should pretend he didn't hear, if they were hard to hear, rose to the tip of his tongue, but never came out. The hope of knowing where Isla was kept him from saying them. I'll try. After what seemed like an eternity to Ophelia, Candice opened her mouth. I'll try. I will challenge myself. When Ophelia, who had been looking at the ground, raised her head, Candice was smiling like a naughty child, showing all her teeth. It was the same expression as the wax seal that sealed the letter he sent to Ophelia. Miss, have you packed everything? Yes, Laura, Isla answered, wearing a winter coat with lots of fur. As expected, it was a little warm inside with a fur-lined hat. We're about to leave. Hurry up and get on the carriage. It was still dark, but it was quite bright outside, covered in white snow. There was only one reason to move out so early. It was leaving this place and moving to another. Because of the snow, he wouldn't be able to go out at night for a while or get information, but he was betting that the Imperial Regular Army or Weihschaffen soldiers would appear nearby again and they would have to flee in a hurry. As she was about to shake the snow off the soles of her boots and get into the carriage, she heard a plaintive voice behind her. When she turned her head, Byron appeared noisily, his eyes full of discontent, as if he didn't like her moving when he should be sleeping. I was joking that I was cold despite wearing a thick outer garment made of high-quality fur. Today, he must have drank a magic potion because his hair and eyes were brown. Mississippi. What are you doing instead of riding? It's cold. Let's get in quickly. While staring at Byron, Cloud spoke to him in a low voice. Isla nodded her head in understanding and sat in the carriage. Certainly, the weather had become much warmer once he got into the carriage. The winter wind that blew fiercely, as if cutting his skin, seemed unable to penetrate inside the carriage. Not long after she took her seat in the carriage, her procession departed. Because it was snowing, the speed was very slow. This was because they had to use a magic tool that blew hot air from the front to melt the snow little by little. Several days passed, moving slowly and little by little like this. As they had to take detours even for short distances because they were only trying to move to places with few people, the group was gradually getting tired of the long journey. Why did the carriage stop suddenly? The carriage, which had been moving slowly but steadily, suddenly stopped, and Isla, startled, looked outside through the small window of the carriage. Not far from the carriage, men dressed in regular Palace Empire uniforms stood guard. What should I do, Cloud? Why is there a checkpoint in a place like this? Byron's bewildered subordinates were restless and asking Cloud for his opinion. Since they chose a path that usually had few people, they couldn't help but be nervous. There was no way to return the way they came, because the knights had already found their carriage. If a procession that was coming safely found a checkpoint and returned, it was clear that they would become suspicious and be chased. It was a situation they couldn't escape quickly because of the snow. There's nothing we can do. We just have to face it head-on. He had a fake ID and had also taken a magic potion. At Cloud's words, the carriage began to slowly move towards the checkpoint again. Where are they going with all this snow? Let me check your passes for a moment. Perhaps tired from the long security check on a road where few people travel, the Imperial soldier yawned and asked for their identification. It's the summit that leads to Slexter. It's a specialized fur store, so now is the season. Would you like a game, sir? The most ingenious of Byron's men naturally invented a lie. Slexter was a small town that was very close to there. Of course, they weren't headed there, but they had made a fake pass just in case they were stopped by security. As expected from a fur trading company, everyone was wearing warm furs, so it was a credible statement. If it was normal, they would have just let it go. Okay, I need to open some cars. They couldn't understand why they did it. If it were a normal check, they would just check the pass and let them go. Even the one who had been complaining at the suggestion of opening the car couldn't help but feel slightly nervous. Why do you do that? You don't need to know. Is there any reason why I shouldn't open it? When asked why he felt so uncomfortable standing guard on a cold day, he gave a cold response. He kept his mouth shut because it wasn't something he could tell anyone, but the truth was that the soldiers were looking for the attempted assassin of the Crown Prince. So they had no choice but to intensify the search and seizure. Hey, there's the guy with the scar over his eye. How did you get that scar? Hearing that the culprit who tried to assassinate the Crown Prince had a wound around his right eye, one of the soldiers who had been carefully observing the men pointed at Cloud and asked, "When I work as a mercenary, it is natural that I get these types of big and small scars. They are like medals. It doesn't seem like that much time has passed. It's a wound older than it looks. Although he spoke calmly and with a gruff voice, the soldier's suspicions increased. His speech and gestures were too polite for a mercenary. Didn't he look like a noble knight? Open the carriage while we are still speaking politely. The soldiers drew their swords and spoke. As the commotion grew, the soldiers at the temporary rest area near the checkpoint also began to join in. Please open it. At this moment, there was no choice but to open the carriage. The documents and objects that were not meant to be seen were covered in fur, and since Byron had also drunk the magic potion, there was no choice but to hope that everything passed without incident.